What if growing older and growing up were not the same thing? A man can be 34, have a job, a home, relationships, and adult responsibilities, yet still avoid difficult conversations, depend heavily on other people, blame everyone else when things go wrong, or run from responsibility whenever life becomes uncomfortable. From the outside, he may look like a fully grown adult, but emotionally, some parts of his development may have stopped much earlier. This is where an important distinction begins. Emotional maturity is not measured by age alone. It is not measured by money, physical strength, social status, or how confident someone appears. Emotional maturity is shown through self awareness, emotional regulation, accountability, empathy, and the ability to face discomfort without immediately escaping from it. Consider Daniel. Daniel is 34 years old. He has a stable career and appears successful to the people around him. But at home, his partner often feels more like his parent than his equal. When bills need to be organized, he expects someone else to handle them. When a difficult conversation begins, he becomes defensive or walks away. When he makes a mistake, he quickly explains why someone else caused it. Daniel does not necessarily see himself as irresponsible. In his mind, he may believe that other people are criticizing him unfairly. He may feel attacked whenever someone points out a problem. He may even believe that avoiding conflict is better than facing it. So, what is happening? Is Daniel simply lazy? Is he selfish? Is he emotionally immature? Or could deeper psychological and environmental patterns be shaping his behavior? The popular phrase man child is often used to describe an adult man who continues to behave in ways associated with emotional immaturity or dependence. But it is important to understand that man child is not a formal mental health diagnosis. It is a common phrase, not a clinical label. The behaviors behind the label can have many possible causes. They may involve emotional immaturity, learned dependency, avoidance, insecure attachment, low emotional awareness, poor coping skills, family patterns, or fear of failure. Understanding these possible causes does not mean excusing harmful behavior. A person's past may help explain why they developed certain patterns, but adults are still responsible for the choices they make and for the impact those choices have on other people. This distinction matters because human behavior is rarely simple. Many boys grow up learning that certain emotions are unacceptable. Sadness may be mocked, fear may be treated as weakness, vulnerability may be punished. A child who repeatedly hears messages like, be tough, stop crying, or deal with it, may slowly learn to hide emotional pain instead of understanding it. But emotions do not disappear simply because someone refuses to talk about them. They often come out in different forms. Instead of saying, I feel hurt, a man may become angry. Instead of admitting, I am afraid I will fail, he may avoid the opportunity completely. Instead of saying, I made a mistake, he may blame another person. Over time, this can create a serious problem. The person may grow physically older without developing the emotional skills needed to handle adult life. However, emotional maturity does not mean becoming serious, boring, or emotionless. A mature adult can be playful. He can enjoy jokes, video games, hobbies, adventure, and carefree moments. He can be spontaneous and still pay his bills. He can have fun and still apologize when he causes harm. The problem begins when avoidance becomes a lifestyle. When someone repeatedly refuses responsibility, other people are forced to carry the emotional, practical, or financial weight. A partner may become the planner, a parent may continue solving problems, friends may constantly rescue him from consequences. At first, this may look like support, but if the pattern never changes, support can slowly become dependence. Now consider Marcus. Marcus changes jobs frequently. He avoids financial planning and often tells himself that he is just not ready for adult responsibilities. Whenever an opportunity appears, he finds a reason to delay. When consequences arrive, someone else often helps him recover. His behavior may appear careless, but underneath it could involve fear of failure, shame, poor coping skills, or a long history of being rescued before consequences became serious. This is why occasional immaturity must be separated from a repeated pattern. Everyone avoids something sometimes. Everyone makes excuses. Everyone has moments when they act emotionally, selfishly, or irresponsibly. The deeper concern appears when the same behaviors happen again and again, damaging relationships, jobs, trust, finances, and opportunities. And this raises a difficult question. Why do some people continue repeating these behaviors even after losing relationships, jobs, trust, or important opportunities? Why does a painful consequence sometimes fail to create lasting change? The answer may involve more than laziness or a lack of intelligence. Behind immature behavior, there may be fear, shame, avoidance, learned helplessness, poor emotional education, or an unwillingness to face uncomfortable parts of the self. Some people have never learned how to name their emotions. Some were protected from every consequence and never developed confidence in solving problems alone. Others learned that responsibility creates pressure and pressure creates fear. None of this means change is impossible. Emotional development can continue throughout adulthood. People can learn to communicate more honestly, regulate difficult emotions, accept responsibility, and build healthier relationships. The first step is recognizing the pattern without turning the person into a permanent label. The goal is not to attack men or suggest that every irresponsible adult man has the same psychological problem. Human development is complicated, and people arrive at adulthood through very different experiences. The central issue is not whether someone enjoys being carefree. The question is whether he can become serious when life requires it. Can he face discomfort without running? Can he accept criticism without treating it as an attack? Can he admit when he is wrong? Can he carry his share of responsibility? Because growing up is not simply about reaching a certain age. It is about developing the ability to face reality, understand yourself, and take responsibility for what you do next. And if some people keep escaping these responsibilities, even when escape repeatedly costs them the things they care about, then we need to look deeper. What keeps the cycle alive? And why can avoidance become so powerful that even painful consequences fail to break it? That is where the psychology becomes even more revealing. Why would an adult Continue acting like a child even when the consequences become obvious. Why would someone keep avoiding responsibility after losing relationships, opportunities, trust, or stability? One important answer involves reinforcement. Imagine a person repeatedly avoids a responsibility, a bill is ignored, a difficult conversation is postponed, a mistake is left for someone else to fix. Then another person steps in and solves the problem. The immediate crisis disappears. For the person who avoided responsibility, this can create short term relief. The uncomfortable feeling is gone, the pressure decreases, the difficult task has been handled. And because the problem was solved without the person having to face it, the avoidance may become more likely to happen again. This does not mean that parents, partners, or friends are responsible for another adult's behavior. They are not. People make their own choices. But unhealthy patterns can become stable when they are repeatedly protected from consequences. Return to Daniel. For years, Daniel's partner has reminded him about bills, corrected his mistakes, apologized for his behavior, and managed difficult conversations on his behalf. She may have started doing these things because she wanted to help. Perhaps she was trying to prevent arguments, protect the relationship, or keep daily life functioning. Over time, however, Daniel began depending on that support. Now, Daniel complains that everyone treats him like a child, but at the same time, he expects other people to perform many of the responsibilities associated with being an adult. This creates a powerful psychological cycle. Avoidance creates short term relief. Short term relief strengthens avoidance. Avoidance creates larger problems. Larger problems create more stress. And because the person has practiced escaping responsibility for so long, facing the problem now feels even more difficult. The cycle continues. This pattern can become especially damaging in romantic relationships. A relationship is supposed to involve two adults sharing responsibility, emotional effort, and the work of maintaining a life together. But when one person repeatedly avoids those responsibilities, the relationship can slowly change. The partner may become a caretaker, then a manager, then a parent, sometimes even a therapist. Instead of asking, how can we solve this together? The relationship begins to revolve around one person managing the other person's emotions, appointments, finances, commitments, and mistakes. At first, the responsible partner may feel needed. Eventually, they may feel exhausted. Resentment begins to grow because the emotional labor is no longer shared equally. The immature partner may feel controlled and complain, "You never let me do anything." But the other person may be thinking, "I would not have to manage everything if you took responsibility yourself." Both people can feel trapped. One feels controlled, the other feels abandoned. And the relationship becomes less like a partnership and more like a cycle of dependence and frustration. Healthy relationships do not require perfection. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone becomes overwhelmed. Everyone needs help sometimes. The difference is what happens next. Can the person acknowledge the mistake? Can they apologize without creating a list of excuses? Can they repair the damage? Can they learn from the experience? instead of expecting someone else to repeatedly rescue them. These questions lead to several common myths. The first myth is, he is just a man, so this behavior is normal. Gender can influence how people are raised and what emotions they are taught to express. Many boys are still taught to hide vulnerability, avoid emotional conversations, or prove themselves through independence. But social expectations do not remove the need for emotional growth. Being male does not make irresponsibility automatically acceptable. The second myth is, a woman or partner can fix him. Support can help. Patience can help. A healthy relationship can create opportunities for growth. But no one can force another adult to develop self awareness. A partner can communicate clearly, they can establish boundaries, they can stop rescuing someone from every consequence. But the decision to change ultimately belongs to the person repeating the pattern. The third myth is, he will automatically grow up with age. But time alone does not create maturity. A person can repeat the same emotional patterns for 10, 20, or 30 years. Age increases automatically. Maturity requires participation. Growth usually involves honest self reflection, real consequences, repeated practice, and sometimes professional support. At the same time, we should avoid the opposite extreme. Not every irresponsible or emotionally avoidant man has a mental disorder. People can become immature during periods of grief, stress, major life transitions, burnout, or emotional crisis. A person who normally functions responsibly may temporarily struggle when life becomes overwhelming. That does not automatically mean they have a psychological disorder. Clinical diagnoses should be made only by qualified professionals. The more useful question is often not, what label can we give this person? The more useful question is, what pattern keeps happening and what is maintaining it? Because patterns can change. Growth may begin when a person notices that their usual defenses are no longer protecting them. Daniel, for example, may eventually recognize that his defensiveness protects him from shame in the moment. When someone criticizes him, he becomes angry. Anger gives him distance from the painful feeling underneath. Perhaps that feeling is embarrassment. Perhaps it is fear of failure. Perhaps it is the belief that making a mistake means he is fundamentally inadequate. But while defensiveness protects Daniel from shame temporarily, it also prevents him from learning. He cannot improve what he refuses to examine. So, his first step may not be becoming a completely different person overnight. It may simply be saying, I notice that I become defensive whenever someone points out a problem. That sentence can be the beginning of self awareness. Marcus may discover something similar. For years, he has told himself that he is not ready. Not ready to plan his finances, not ready to commit to a career, not ready to make a difficult decision, but eventually he realizes that waiting to feel ready has become a way to avoid taking action. The truth is that many adult responsibilities do not become comfortable before we begin them. Sometimes confidence comes after action, not before it. Practical growth can involve simple but difficult behaviors. learning to name emotions instead of acting them out, apologizing without adding excuses, managing money, keeping commitments, communicating directly, tolerating frustration, accepting that discomfort is not always a sign that something is wrong, and allowing consequences to teach lessons that rescue once prevented. Therapy can also help some people understand the deeper roots of their behavior. A qualified professional may help someone explore childhood experiences, attachment patterns, anxiety, shame, emotional avoidance, or other factors affecting how they respond to responsibility and relationships. But maturity does not mean becoming emotionless. It does not mean becoming perfect. A mature person can still feel overwhelmed. They can still need help. They can still enjoy childish hobbies, laugh at silly jokes, or spend an afternoon doing something completely unproductive. The difference is that they can return to responsibility when responsibility is required. They can make mistakes and take ownership. They can hurt someone and attempt to repair the damage. They can recognize that needing help is different from expecting other people to live their life for them. Daniel's change, if it happens, may begin with small steps. He completes a responsibility without being reminded. He stays in a difficult conversation instead of walking away. He admits, I was wrong, without immediately explaining why it was someone else's fault. He may eventually seek therapy to understand why criticism feels so threatening. Marcus may begin by accepting that he does not need to feel completely ready before making a responsible decision. He creates a basic financial plan. He keeps one commitment, then another. These actions may appear small from the outside, but psychological growth is often built through repeated small choices. Neither Daniel nor Marcus needs to transform instantly. Real change is rarely dramatic. More often, it looks like doing something differently the next time the old pattern appears. And this raises an important question for anyone close to an emotionally immature adult. Are you protecting this person, or are you preventing them from growing? Helping someone through a difficult moment is not the same as carrying their entire life. Support is not the same as rescue. Boundaries are not punishment. Sometimes allowing a person to experience the natural results of their choices is one of the most honest forms of support available. The goal is not to shame emotionally immature people. The goal is to understand how patterns develop, why they continue, and what makes change possible. Growing up is not about losing your playful side. It is about becoming responsible for your choices, your emotions, and the impact you have on other people. Age happens automatically. Maturity does not. Some people may spend years avoiding adulthood, but psychological growth can begin at any age when a person becomes willing to face themselves honestly. And sometimes the most important step toward growing up is simply recognizing that no one else can do it for you.